Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout. On television for many years, from the 90s until I think about 2015, Barbara Walters would present the list of the 10 most fascinating people of the year. And I was thinking about that because if there was a list of the 10 most fascinating people in the lean space, I am confident that our guest today would be on that list. And I think that you will agree with me after listening to this episode. Today's guest is Lean Six Sigma Black Belt Alan Goodman, and this is the first part of my two-part conversation with Alan. The second part of the conversation will be in our next episode. In this episode, we talk about iconic movies, world championship sports teams, and looking at processes and thinking of ways to make those processes better. I'm really glad Alan is here. I'm really glad you're here. And now, my conversation with Alan Goodman. Alan is the Instructional Chair for Quality Engineering and Technology at the Milwaukee Area Technical College. He is a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, a public speaker, a consultant, and one of the most fascinating people in the lean space. Alan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. And I have to start without even knowing it. You have been a part of my life for about 45 years because you were in one of my all-time favorite movies and one of the most famous scenes in all of movies. You were one of the kids running with Rocky in Rocky 2.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how that turned out. Unfortunately, I didn't get any SAG credits for it. But, my dad took my brother and I down to the art museum. I'm from Philly, obviously. Mm-hmm. And for a casting call. And they just needed a bunch of kids in that scene. And, at the time, we didn't really think much of it. We're like, oh, it's cool maybe to be in a movie. We didn't really know who Sylvester Stallone was, But we went down there and there were a whole bunch of kids there. There's some kids I actually went to high school with who were actually running closer to him. But it was really cool just to be involved in a movie and then to see it afterwards. Now I never actually found myself in the scene, unfortunately. But being there was just really just a fun moment. And looking back on that, it's really an iconic movie. Iconic scene. It really represents Philadelphia, the whole underdog story. So it's pretty cool to be involved with that.
I can only imagine. And for me, whenever I need to get myself pumped up, I need to really rally myself to accomplish something, I put on that scene and watch from the beginning and watch as the crowd grows and he's going up the steps. And that must have been so cool to be a part of it.
Yeah, it was. It's funny because it's not like the movie in that, you don't see all like the retakes. So when you see the movie, it's like, oh man, this is wonderful. He ran from, South Philly through the through Italian Market, downtown, all the way to the art museum. And in fact, it's like probably 20 takes of that. But just seeing the end result, you don't really think about that part of it.
I have to imagine when you talk to people and they find this out, they're as fascinated as I am. I imagine you've had so many amazing conversations that have started because of this.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a customer meeting one time at one of my corporate jobs, and we were just kind of having dinner and relaxing, and I mentioned that I was in Rocky 2, and half the people pulled out their phones and immediately went to YouTube, pulled up the video. They're looking for me. I had an afro then, and they were like looking for me, and I was like, I haven't found myself. Like, if you find me, like that's great, but I haven't found myself in the movie. But yeah, it's really definitely a conversation starter. You realize how popular that series was, Rocky, how influential it is. And, it's all about, being the underdog. Mm-hmm. And I think people can really relate to that. Someone who's not expected to do what they did and they overachieve, they overcome some obstacles to get there, to get to their goal. I think a lot of people relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. So you grew up in Philadelphia, Alan. You were
Mm-hmm.
class of 1988 at Central High School in Philadelphia. Was
Yep.
there anything about your childhood or your high school experience that led you to the path you've been on, both as a teacher, a consultant, a speaker, and of course, we'll get into one of your more recent businesses soon, a Goodman's Desserts. So, was there anything in your childhood or your high school career that really put you on the path that you're on now?
Yeah, and I have to really give a lot of credit to my parents because I don't know that I was the greatest student, but in hindsight, I look back and my parents made sure that we were always in the best schools,
Mm-hmm.
best public schools. Um, I when I got to college, and I'm going to step back and talk about high school. When I got to college, I realized how well high school prepared me for it because it came easier. Central High School is a school that had a 97% matriculation rate.
Wow.
We had 500 students in my senior class. So I think there were literally maybe one or two students that didn't go to college. Everybody else went. So when you're in that kind of excellence, in a diverse environment, um, it really motivates you and really sets your path early. And so that you're thinking about what college am I going to go to? It's not like you're looking at any other path. You already set your bar pretty high. Um, I think that for teaching, I think really it started in my junior high school, which was Masterman, Julia R.
Mm-hmm.
Masterman School. Central and Masterman were, I think, in the probably top 10 schools in the state. I think Central and Masterman at one point were 1 and 2, 2 and 1. They kept flipping back and forth. And I had a teacher in fifth grade who named Mr. Goulet, who was my geography teacher. Now, learning about state capitals, biggest rivers and lakes and all, it doesn't seem terribly exciting to a lot of people. But Mr. Goulet, what he did was he made it into a school-wide quiz show, kind of like Jeopardy.
Uh-huh.
And so the school started in fifth grade and went all the way up to 12th. And so, but the fifth through ninth grade, we would compete to see who would win the quiz show. And so we're learning all of our states, our capitals. What's the state's biggest product or what's it known for? All these things that you know would seem sort of boring to children, but it was so competitive that we loved it. And so as I didn't see myself as a teacher then, but as I progressed to become one, I always look back at Mr. Goulet because he really made learning fun and exciting and competitive. And it really just made coming to school fun. And just for his class, like there's some other classes that were a little boring. I wasn't really thrilled about, but Mr. Goulet's class, it was like, oh man, I know I'm gonna have a great time. I'm gonna learn a lot, and it's gonna be fun. And so I try to bring that into my classes now, and even in the consulting I do. Gotta make it fun. Gotta laugh, gotta play some games. Kind of alter the learning and give it in different ways so that people can pick it up.
You went to Hampton University
Mm-hmm.
and you got a degree in finance, and then you got an MBA from Temple at the Fox School of Business.
Mm-hmm.
Were you exposed to lean principles at all in college or in your MBA program? And did you think that might be the direction you're going in?
Yeah, you know what? So it's interesting. My experience at Hampton University was wonderful. Hampton's at HBCU,
Mm-hmm.
and Hampton prepared me to be a bold thinker, right? Because what happens is that you go there, they build you up, build your confidence, your knowledge up, so that when you come out of college and you're going to hit your corporate job, whatever you're going to do, you feel confident in that you're smart enough, you're prepared enough, and so it allowed me to take some chances with the way I think, to be confident in that, and so take some risks. So that really prepared me for that. I actually, in between Hampton and Temple, I spent 2 years at the Philadelphia Stock Exchange.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, yeah. So that was a goal to work there, to work on the stock exchange. I didn't make it to New York, but Philly was right there. So got to work there. That's where I really started to look at things differently because I used to have to reconcile this report of all broker activity on the floor.
Uh-huh.
The report, it was a paper report, so it was printed out, and I'm aging myself because it would print and it would have like the little holes on the side that you rip off, yeah. So, but the report on at the end of the month was literally like probably 3 feet high. And I'd have to flip through each page and reconcile these accounts activity down to the penny. And I was kind of like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like this seems ridiculous. There's got to be, can we sort this so that all of the, any of the mismatches, are up front or highlighted, or it's got to be some different way to do this report. So I just thought the whole process was crazy, and of course I pushed back on it, and it got pushed right back to me. Nobody was willing to change it. So I remember that as I move forward. And then in Temple, really just understanding the education space, comparing it to what I went through at Hampton, different atmosphere, but I was in class with a lot of professionals, folks who were working and taking classes, and so I got to really lean on some of or hear about some of their experiences, their work experiences as they're going through the class, some of the problems that they run into, because we talk about that outside of class, and really just kind of understanding what corporate was going to be like when I got there.
I have to ask, Trading Places took place in Philadelphia, and there are all the scenes on the floor in Trading Places when they're trading commodities. Is it like the movies when you're down on the floor? Is it like the movies, or is it something completely different?
It is kind of like the movies, and so this is gonna be funny. So I know you're gonna bring up Trading Places. So so two things. So Juilliard Masterman is across the street from a community college. At the time, it was a community college. The scene where Jamie Lee Curtis and Dan Aykroyd were coming out of the police station. That's right across the street from my junior high school. And we were coming out of school when they were filming that scene.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding. And then the other thing is, so after grad school, I worked in a bank down on Broad and Walnut Street, and all of the scenes where the Mortimer and oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name, when they were in their offices, and they would walk through this luxurious looking building. Well, I actually worked in that building. So yeah, that was where as a banker, as a commercial lender, I worked in that building. So yeah, a lot of ties to movies in Philly.
You are tied in with two of the most iconic movies of all time.
Yeah, I didn't get in that one, but yeah, it's funny. I was like, oh man, this is where they filmed it. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, it is pretty wild down on the floor. I've got to look down on the floor. I didn't have to be down there too often, but it's pretty wild because there's a lot of money involved, a lot of pressure, timing, as far as making sales or buying stock or whatever. So there's a lot of intensity down there, particularly when money is lost, when the market kind of goes down. Folks, there's been it's been a fight or two or several that we've heard about, down on the floor. So it's kind of intense. And those 2 years there really, it reinforced for me that, okay, I've seen it. I don't want to do this. And let me go ahead and get a master's degree so that I can be more promotable in my next role.
I think it's interesting because one of the things I've found doing this show is that lean is everywhere. Once you become exposed to it, it's everywhere. You see it everywhere. And maybe even before you're exposed to the lean principles and concepts, you're looking at processes and thinking, there has to be a better way to do this.
Yeah. Some of the things I saw were it was just ridiculous. I mean, and this was before really that we started digitizing things. But even still, I mean, just the amount of walking that we would do, and there was no great way to communicate activity on the floor to up to where we were in the office, where we kind of look at the activity, so that you get paper reports delivered, and walking back and forth to the floor and down the hall. Like it's just at the time, I was like, wow, this is just this can't be the way it is. Like there's got to be there's got to be something maybe we're going to evolve into to make this better. But looking back on it, it was just there were so many improvement opportunities that we could have put in place. I mean, but the what I will say is that, and I know we're going to talk about it, Goodman's Desserts, but really baking, I think, set the path for me. And that there's so many different failure points in baking, and that you have to adjust and figure out how to resolve them. I think that really started me on the path to lean. And so I probably wouldn't have thought about how to do things differently in some of the other roles that I had without starting off baking, because now I'm following a process, a recipe. I'm adjusting it based on the failure points, or something that worked. I'm figuring out how to do things quicker. All those things that I didn't know were actually lean were kind of embedded in me early on, so that I could eventually get to being a lean professional.
I was going to eventually bring up a Goodman's Desserts, but since you brought it up, let's talk about it now. You started baking as a child with your family, and the things that you bake are so good that people started telling you that you need to sell these products because they're so good. So you started the business, was it in 2019?
2018.
2018, okay.
Yeah, toward the end of 2018. So I had a good friend who's a dentist. He and his wife were the first couple. My wife and I met when we moved to Milwaukee about almost 20 years ago. And, so I saw his business. I had seen other black-owned businesses before, so that was no shock. But he was, very well-run business. And so we became friends, and he would invite us over to his house, family cookouts, and we would come over. And one day I was like, hey, can I bring anything over? He's like, yeah, bring whatever you want. So I made a bread pudding. I just started making it. I thought I was pretty good. So I was like, all right, I'll just take it over. And so I took it over there, handed it off, and we were just kind of talking. And my friend pulls me to the side, and he's like, I want you to just look at what's happening here. And I'm like, what's happening? And he's like, look at how the energy has just changed in the room with people eating your dessert. And so I looked, and people were tasting it, and they were smiling, and were like, oh my goodness, it's so good. And kind of the mood, it was already a good mood anyway, but it just got happier, more energetic mood in the room. And he said, that's a gift, is what he told me. He said, when you can change the energy in a room by what you provide, he's like, that's a gift. He said, you should really sell that. And I hadn't really thought about it at the time. I had baked in college too for friends, for like birthday parties and stuff. So I thought about it, but the thing about corporate is interesting, is that you kind of get into this mode of, my pay is coming every other week. It's very consistent, and so moving into a business ownership is difficult the longer you've been in corporate, I think, because even I've run businesses in corporate, but still, that consistency isn't there anymore. And so it took me about 10 years to finally decide to do it. I had gotten a little tired of corporate, of what I was doing. And I was like, I'll start this business. I've been baking for over 4 decades. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to start this business, and I'm going to build it up on the side for maybe 4 or 5 years. And then, and I'll eventually move out of corporate, move into this business. That was the plan. I started the business in October 2018. In November 2018, I showed up for work, and I got hey, Alan, we want to meet with you. What does that mean? Yeah. I'm like, well, let me grab my notebook. You won't need that. Oh boy. So they had company layoffs. So I got laid off that next month, literally 30 days afterwards. And I was like, okay, so huh. So you got a little bit of a package, but I actually felt some peace though, because I didn't really wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. So
Uh-huh.
um, you went home and told my wife, and I said, well, I guess I'm going to just jump all into this business. And my wife said, okay. She said, I do have a question though, and I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, these bills, how are we going to pay those? And I said, that is a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, very good question. So it just so happened at the time, for a number of years, I've been teaching I've been teaching the Lean Six Sigma classes at MATC part time. So I
Hmm.
was teaching like 2 or 3 classes. Um, and they called me during this time and said, hey, we need somebody to come in and lead the program. Are you available? And it just so happened that I was. So, yeah, so perfect timing
The
for
timing
that.
has been perfect for you on many occasions.
Yes, yes. Now there have been some imperfect timing too. Like there's never a great time to be laid off. I will say that.
No,
That's
that is
that's
true.
never. Yeah, that's you never want that. You want to leave on your own terms. But um, but MATC came calling, and so I went in, took over the program, um, and I've been doing that for I think this is year 6 now that I've been doing that. And so, but what it's done is it's really got me more back fully immersed into Lean and Six Sigma, where I was kind of using it in some of my other roles. Now I really got to jump in and really immerse myself in it while I'm also building this dessert business. And it reminds me to use those tools in my business as well to be really as operationally efficient as possible. Um,
I'm excited to talk about this for a number of
mhm,
reasons. One, you've had a lot of acclaim in the Milwaukee area, a lot of success, including being associated with the world champion Milwaukee Bucks in 2020 and 2021.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
have to ask, you grew up in Philadelphia during the glory days of the 76ers with Dr.
Mhm.
J and Moses Malone and Mo Cheeks and Andrew Toney. Was it hard shifting your allegiances from the 76ers to the Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, so that was tough because Philadelphians we're loyal, we're loyal fans
Uh huh.
as other places too, very loyal. Um, and I've had to go to a few Bucks games as a guest of the Bucks. As a matter of fact, one time in particular is where the Bucks gave out grants, business grants. It
Uh
was
huh.
Bucks and Fiserv, and they invited me to a game, and they were going to put my face on the jumbotron. They were going to do like a little video about the business, which was wonderful. It was wonderful. So I went, I had my Bucks hat on, all that kind of stuff. They were playing Philly,
Uh,
and so that was tough, But I had to put my pride aside and say, what, the Bucks are doing something really nice for me. I'm going to be a Bucks fan, and so it, I will say this: the Bucks organization, really a wonderful organization. They do a lot in the community, a lot of support for businesses, and so I'm grateful for them. So it's not so from that perspective, it's not like it's an unlikable franchise, and I'm like, oh, now I have to, No, they were. I mean, the Bucks they're a wonderful organization. So I can't even, and I was happy to be involved during that championship season because I felt like I was part of it.
uh huh.
Um, how I got into the Bucks though was interesting because normally, you kind of do this through, like the Chamber of Commerce or some kind of somebody introduces you, and I mean, really, what this was just two East Coast guys connecting, and the other East Coast guy I'm talking about is Peter Fagan, who's president of the Bucks, and he's from New York, and so I literally went to an event, and after the event, he was taking questions. My goal was to hand him a box of cookies for my business, and with hopefully an intro to some other folks to do business with them. And so I went up to him, introduced myself, said I was from Philly. He was from New York. He asked me how I got here. I asked him how he got here. We laughed about that. Long story short, I gave him the cookie and said, "Hey, look, I just wanted to talk to you. Hope to do business with the Bucks. I'm a big basketball fan." And he said, "I'll have my people call you," which normally means you're never going to hear from him again. That's usually what that means. But maybe like 3 weeks later, his head chef called me and said, "Hey, Peter told me to talk to you. When can you meet?"
What was it like getting that call? It must have been so exciting.
It was exciting. I was shocked because again, I'm a big basketball fan. I actually started baking because I was playing basketball instead of going to the library, like I said I was going to. So I'm a big fan. I played for years, and I go in the game, watch basketball. So I'm a big fan, and so that was pretty exciting. Um, so the day that we met, I made some samples, and I actually went to MATC that day because I was in my office. My office faces the Fiserv Forum. So I came out of my office, walked across the street to the Fiserv Forum, went in the door, met with the head chefs, and then walked back over after we're done back to my office at MATC. Right. So I actually looked out the window before my meeting. I was like, I'm about to go over there and meet with the head chef. And that's pretty amazing.
Wow.
And so maybe a week or two later, head chef called me, really nice guy, and basically said, "Okay, we're going to make an order for some cookies." At the time, I was making these cookies myself. And so I was using a place called the Ambassador Hotel, which let me use their kitchen. They had me pay. They said, "Pay us whatever you want in rent. It's fine." This is during a pandemic. And so there's nobody in the building except for there's one person in the building, just kind of security, just kind of hanging out. So that's it. I had the whole kitchen to myself. And so I would go in there and make all these cookies that the Bucks ordered by myself. I've spent a few nights in there, late nights in there, making these cookies, watching the Bucks road games on my Mac, and knowing that with each win, there's going to be another order. So again, I became a fan that way.
You've got a lot to root for.
Right, absolutely. I'm like, come on, Giannis, come on, whatever, it's like, let's go. So it was great. But there's also a lesson for me in that that wasn't sustainable, right? So I'm making these cookies. I'm hand making these cookies in the kitchen. Had plenty of space to do it, but hand making 100 cookies or even 50 cookies, like, all right, it's fine. When you're talking like a few thousand cookies, like that's different. You know what I mean? It's like, so I was like, this is not sustainable. So I already started thinking about how do I transition from this to where I can actually handle volume like this. And so those cookies went into the suites in the Fiserv Forum, and the Jockey Club, which is like it's like you need certain access to get in there to get to food and stuff. So they're really exclusive areas. So each round, each set of home games, I made another batch of cookies, and they were in those suites. I actually got some texts from my friends who were at the game, like, "Are these your cookies in the suite?" Like, man, this is amazing.
That
so
is
that was
cool.
pretty cool. Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool also that some of the workers. I ran into one woman who works in culinary in the Fiserv Forum, and I was in there for another event, and she said, "Wait a minute, aren't you the guy that made those green cookies for the Bucks?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "We loved your cookies. Like, we could taste the butter, the vanilla. Like, you could tell somebody handmade these. Like, we loved your cookies," which I was really nice of her to say. And so after that season, that championship season, when they, that was pretty cool. They won the championship. I didn't get a fake ring, but that's okay.
Thanks, Alan. And now a quick break to tell you about another champion. MoreSteam is the leading global provider of online training, certifications, and technology for Lean Six Sigma. We work with individuals, universities, and businesses large and small to provide proven solutions that are right for them. From interactive training to process improvement software, we are here to help you work as efficiently and effectively as possible. Visit MoreSteam.com to learn more. And we are back with Alan Goodman as he talks about what happened next for a Goodman's Desserts after that championship season.
After that, I started to look into co-manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, two things. One, started looking at co-manufacturers to be able to make my product at volume. And so, met up with one, went over the recipe, straightforward recipe, all shelf, type ingredients, no chemicals or anything. They're like, yep, we can make these, no problem. So they started making my cookies. So that was great. The other thing, though, was, and this is a matter of preference, is that I started looking at buildings initially, because that's what everybody else does. You start a business, you grow into your own building, you have your own space, which I think is wonderful, to be able to walk into your own space, have people come into your space.
Sure.
I looked at it the other way as to what would I have to do to maintain that space, right? So being in the Ambassador Hotel kitchen, you got to bring in the health inspector. You got to make sure it's extra clean. You got to do all the certifications. You have to have product there. If you have a store, you have to have product there every day, right? You have to have somebody there every day. You got to have employees. All these things that as I went through corporate America, are like, yeah, I don't think I really want employees. I've had employees before. I don't think it's hard to find good employees now. I don't want to have to deal with the health department all the time. I don't want to have to do all these certifications all the time. I'd rather have somebody else do that. And I'll just go out here and make relationships like the one I made with Peter Fagan, and just approach people and do it that way. That's what I want to spend my time on. And so from a lean perspective, I decided to, just for the sake of efficiency and time, and all that, I'm gonna outsource that to someone else, knowing I'm sacrificing a little bit of margin, but in the end, I think it's gonna allow me to grow bigger than I would if I was actually doing that part of the work. And that's a gamble that I made, because again, most people get a brick and mortar and they do that. I decided not to. I decided to sell online and then work with larger customers, corporate customers, sports teams, etc. And I understand it's going to take longer to build that way, because it's different. A lot of businesses go to farmers markets. They go to other places, fairs, all these night markets now are big. Like all these things that people do, which again, it depends on the business. It's worked out great for some people. For me, having been through the long 80-hour weeks in corporate, sometimes it's like how do I put in work but not repeat that thing that wore me down and really led me to the path of leaving corporate. I don't want to just jump right back into that, because I know I won't like it. So how do I run this business so that it's sustainable and that I still enjoy doing it? That was really my focus.
This concludes part 1 of my conversation with Alan Goodman. And I'm sure you will agree, like I told you at the beginning of the episode, Alan is truly one of the most fascinating people in the entire lean space. Great conversation. And in our next episode, I will bring you part 2 of my conversation with Alan Goodman. We will talk about Alan's introduction to lean, using lean in businesses of all sizes, including small businesses, and Alan's work teaching lean principles to kids. It has been so great having Alan Goodman on the show. Thank you so much, Alan. And thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, MoreSteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.